I'm Phil Gale. Welcome to the programme. We start at the Munich Security Conference here in Germany, where the country's leader has called for Europe and the United States to revive and repair their transatlantic relationship. Referring to some of Donald Trump's previous comments and actions, including tariffs and his threats to annex Greenland, Friedrich Merz said a deep rift had opened up between the traditional allies. And even though he said the world order established after the Second World War no longer existed, the German leader insisted that Europe and the US were still stronger together.
For 3 generations, trust amongst allies, partners and friends has made NATO the strongest alliance of all times. Europe knows deeply how precious this is. In the era of great power rivalry, even the United States will not be powerful enough to go it alone. Dear friends, being a part of NATO is not only Europe's competitive advantage, it's also the United States' competitive advantage. So let's repair and revive transatlantic trust together. We, the Europeans, we are doing our part.
Let's join DW's chief political editor, Michaela Kufner, who is at the conference in Munich. Welcome, Michaela. So let's start with Chancellor Merz's speech and more warnings of this new world order.
Yes, absolutely. Really what he's trying to do, he's trying to turn the tables a tiny bit, and I stress a tiny bit, on the United States, because he did also recognize that there's a huge dependency there. What I'm gathering here, I'm here at the cafe, it's basically the watering hole of the Munich Security Conference. Everybody has to come here at some point in time, is that the Europeans are getting more united and they are discovering their own strength to a certain degree, knowing that they simply don't have the military capacity or the economic one at this moment in time to really live without the United States. But there seems to be more determination to change that, and the key word here is Greenland. That really was a turning point. I've spent a lot of time traveling with the Chancellor, speaking to people around him. That was a moment of reckoning for the Europeans as a whole, and we were told that this speech was very carefully coordinated with other European partners, meaning, of course, France, also meaning Britain, to send a clear message that the Europeans want to define their own future and will now dedicate a lot more resources to being able to not just project power, but actually have the power it takes to have any kind of say in this world of global powers, which can no longer be dominated by the United States. That was a rather blunt message there to Trump.
Right, and we presume that this was all about Trump, do we?
Well, he tried to not make it all about Trump, but of course, the language he used and the warning to the US that basically its days as the determining world power are over, he did say that the global power of the United States was being challenged and it was potentially already lost. That's what he said in German, though. He didn't say that in English. But he said it in as many words that the US needs other allies as well. That was quite a message to send to the United States. That was a message to Trump, but then he defined where he sees Europe's strength and where Europe needs to do its homework. But the outrageousness of his analysis and his message somewhat leaves that to the small print for now. But that includes the usual, I dare say, of bolstering economic strength. He did name individual countries. India, of course, where the EU just signed a huge trade deal, but also the United Arab Emirates, the Gulf states, where he just traveled. I traveled with him there. So this is not just about values. This is about viable economic trade relationships. And that's another takeaway, that the Europeans are now also not just speaking more in the language of Donald Trump, but also acting in the language, and that is very much in doing deals and creating more economic opportunities.
Okay, now, of course, this is a big event anyway, but Attention is focused on it since the US Vice President J.D. Vance came to this event this time last year and gave Europeans a good slapping. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is due to speak tomorrow. Can we expect more of that? Can we expect him to indeed rebut what the Chancellor has been saying?
Well, I've been talking to a couple of people about what their expectations are, also on the US side, and they seem to expect a lot less than last year. But frankly, last year sent such a shock here through the whole of Europe, not just through the Bayerische Hof Hotel where the Munich Security Conference is, that it would be hard to reproduce. I think that Merz has shown that he's willing to define the narrative that comes out of here. We'll see whether the US sees that as a challenge, that it wants to rebuke. That's a possibility. But Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, personally is seen as one of the moderates. He's also, together with J.D. Vance, who so shocked everybody here, a high potential to succeed Donald Trump in becoming the next Republican nominee. Having said all of that, he will be delivering a message by the US president. That much is for sure. So it just kind of depends on how closely Trump actually listened to the speech here and whether he wants to rise to the challenge. He has the possibility to do this, but the message from the Europeans now clearly is also that, yes, if there is another tariff in response, we're just going to deal with it because there is so much uncertainty connected to tariffs imposed, taken away, eased, rules changing left, right and center, that the Europeans are now willing to define their own course. And that's what Friedrich Merz here did, echoing to some degree Mark Carney. I want to definitely single him out at the World Economic Forum, right, who spoke of leaving the nostalgia for the old transatlantic relationship behind.
Thank you, Michaela. Chief Political Editor, Michaela Kufner. Well, Olaf Böhnke is also at the Munich Security Conference. He's Berlin Director of the Alliance of Democracies Foundation. That's a non-profit organisation dedicated to the advancement of democracy and free markets. Welcome to DW. Let's start with that speech by the German Chancellor. Were you surprised by his bold message to the US?
No, actually not. I think Merz's speech for me was a very consequential succession of what Prime Minister Carney in Davos actually kicked off. So in a way, even he did not use, so Merz did not use the term middle powers, but it was a very clear, very concrete definition of what it means to implement the middle power concept. So Carney was more philosophical and a little bit more abstract, and Merz really, defined, so what would it need for a country like Germany, and also then as the leading power in Europe to implement it. And I think that was quite impressive. So it was a different mood in the room afterwards. So it was not like a year ago when everyone was really frustrated and angry about J.D. Vance's speech. So this was not the case here. So people were really confident, okay, so now Europe talks through the voice of Merz from a point of strength. And this is a real big difference.
What strength? What strength? The United States has done nothing in this last year but insult and laugh at Europe. What is this point of strength that Merz is speaking from?
I would say it's a little bit like, you could say, couple therapy. So, and usually, so Europe, but also specifically Germany, was good in feeling itself in sorrow and mourning and whining. Oh, the Americans fell out of love with Europe, so why? What did we wrong? So you need us. But it was also kind of it was they did not want to see that the world had changed, and also that the interests of the United States had changed, sir, and turned from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And of course, I think Donald Trump has a good argument by saying, okay, you know what? So why should American taxpayers for your security pay for your security here in Europe? So therefore, but still, the Europeans, even President Obama already said so. They did not really start decided to implement a new system where they take more responsibility on their own shoulders. So, and Donald Trump, in his very unique way, made the Europeans realize, okay, maybe he's right. Of course, there's a lot of disagreement how he says so, and the Greenland issue was definitely something crossed the red line, but sometimes you need to do this so that the weaker part in a relationship realize, okay, so I don't have to be the weaker part.
Okay.
I can also be on my own, and that's what they don't did.
Transatlantic relations as couple therapy. I must explore that one a little later. Is the German Chancellor right, though, when he says the US has reached the limits of its power as a solo actor?
I think so, definitely. So in the combination specifically with Trump's kind of crazy tariff policy, I think he did not make any friends around the world. So he might win his local constituency and the MAGA community in the US, and this is exactly also what Chancellor Merz referred to, that this is a different narrative. We don't accept this here in Europe. But Trump also made a lot of so he did not create a lot of love abroad actually with this tariffs policy. So, and this opens the door for Europe. So all these free trade agreements now with the Mercosur, with India, with others to come, opens the door because Trump was so looking on the domestic front, and the Europeans realized, okay, if we take that chance and be the one actually reaching out our hands, then maybe we win all together. And so this is why I said this was pretty much also what Prime Minister Carney offered in Davos, and Merz now actually did the same.
But again, where is the evidence? Where is the evidence that the United States has reached the limits of its power as a solo actor? You say Trump isn't interested in making... You say Trump hasn't made any friends. He's not interested in making friends. He's all about America first. So where is the evidence that the United States has reached the limit of its power as a solo actor?
I learned here from sources I cannot quote that by 2027, the Chinese Navy is the double size of the US Navy. So that's just one indicator where you can see, okay, other powers from the more darker side of the liberal spectrum are not sleeping. So there's an alliance of autocracies around the world. So we see Iran, Russia, China, North Korea backing each other. And I think it's a mistake for the US to believe they can take them all on their own. I don't think they can do so. But of course, it's important for the US to push the Europeans take care of their own conflicts in their hemisphere, in their geography. But in the end, as I said, I don't believe that the US is strong enough to fight all the bad people in the world on their own.
Thank you for that. Olaf Böhnke from the Alliance of Democracies Foundation.